And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Reef. Now, I already did a first impressions of Reef when I played it way back earlier this year, but this is the final copy of the game, and so I wanted to give my final thoughts on this fairly simple game. Now, this is another game from Next Move, a game with 4 letters in its name, like Azul. Now we have Reef, and it's going to fit in that same kind of category. Hey, are you new to gaming, or you just want to play a very simple, easy game? Reef is kind of like that. Now, it's designed by Emerson Matsuuchi, who also has done Century Spice Road. He's one of my favorite designers. And so, well, actually, if you've watched my best of his games, you already know where this one ranks for me, but let's take another look at it. So let's take a look here. Each player is going to get a board here, which is a 4x4 grid, and you're going to also have a couple cards in your hand to start the game. Now you'll notice there's 4 different colors of coral here, and they're also different shapes. It doesn't really matter, just to differentiate them. You're going to start with one of each in the middle of your board like this, and then the game begins. Now on your turn, you can do one of 2 things. You can either take a card from these face-up cards that are next to the table here and add it to your hand, although you can only have 4 cards in your hand. So I can take any of these cards. If you take the card that's at the top of the deck, you can do so, but then you need to put a point on the lowest numbered card out here. So for example, I put a point on this one. If there's more of the same number of points, equal points, then you can pick which one that it goes on. So you probably would only do that if you're desperate. You can also play a card, and you have to play a card if you have a handful of 4. When you play a card, first you look at the pieces at the top. So this one shows 2 green pieces. So I could put these anywhere. I could put one here, for example, and I could put one here if I wanted to. Now, the only caveat is that you can't go higher than 4 on a level. So after that, once I place the pieces, I can then score. This one here gives me 5 points for every 2 or higher stack of purple or 2 or higher stack of orange in a diagonal formation like that. I'm not even close to having that, so no worries. But let's say my next turn I play this one here. So it lets me place 2 yellows. And maybe I place the 2 yellows like this. All right. Then after I do that, I get 4 points for every 3 of the greens. Hey, well, let's say I placed that one there earlier. Hey, look, 3 greens, that's 4 points. Now this would not give me 8 points because you can't use the same stack more than once, but I could score more points if I had, for example, something like this here, where I have 2 rows of green diagonals, so I would get 8 points when I played this card. So you can get a lot of points if you set up ahead of time like that. And that's basically how the game is going to play. The game is going to play until one of these piles runs out. Everyone gets one last turn. After the final turn, any card that's still in your hand, you can score them if they work, but you can only score them once. So what do the different cards mean that are in the deck? So this one here, which would be a great one for me to play next, because it gives me 4 for every yellow that's on level 3. I have 1. Of course, I would probably like to do this. If I did that, then that card would give me 12 points because I have 3 of them. This is just these colors next to each other, and only the ones that are on the top of a stack ever count, but you can count them. So a green next to a purple, this would be a legitimate thing here. This is just for every purple that you see is worth 1 point. This says for your highest yellow on the board, each orange that's next to it. So my highest yellow is one of these 2. So maybe if I had some oranges like this, 3 oranges next to that one, here I would get 6 points for that. 3 greens in a row, and so they're all pretty much the same. And if the stack ever runs out, the game will also end, but that's very rare. It's mostly going to be when one of the sets of colors runs out. Whoever has the most points at that time, by the way, points are right here, is the winner of the game. The pieces here are really chunky and nice. You're going to like playing with them. They don't look as much like coral as you might think. They're more like children's toys. They're really great pieces though. They feel good. They stack easily. They're fun to move around. The point tokens are great too. 1s, 3s, 5s, and 10s. They look good. And the cards are very sharp. They're extremely easy to figure out what each card does, with the exception this is probably the only one that's a little wonky. But other than that, if it says that means each purple that's exactly on level 2. That means 2 or higher for orange and yellow in a diagonal line. But really, this game is so simple to teach and play. And they do, a nice little thing here where there's these 4-player boards, and you just give one to each player. And whoever gets the starfish one is the player who goes first. That's a nice way to determine that. I love this game. I love this game. My only complaint about the game would be maybe the reef pieces could look more reefy instead of toy-y, and I wish that the rules had been a little clearer on what each card does. Sure, it's not that hard to figure them out, but I would have just said this card does this, 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 and shown an example of each. Those are my only 2 complaints. Other than that, love this game. I think Reef is so much fun. It's simple. You are literally take a card or play a card. But it's figuring out how to play your cards in the right order. So let's say I have a card that says 3, I get points for every green that's on level 3. So I'm going to start, setting up for that. But if that's all I work on, I'm not going to get a lot of points in the meantime. And you'll find yourself sometimes with a loop of cards. If I play these 2 yellows here, it will let me score every red and purple next to each other. And this card lets me put a red and purple out and score for yellows. Which one do I play first? And these are great decisions. The game is a little different playing from 2 to 4 players because you have more cards available to you. And when you take a card, that it's not going to change much there in the middle, the cards that are there, while in a 4-player game it does. There's also very little interaction in this game. Really, the only interaction is sometimes you'll take a card because you'll go, I'm taking that card. You can't have that. You're going to score too many points if you get that card. That's literally the only interaction, and yet I feel like it still is a ton of fun. It's fun to watch your reef grow, and you see these things. By the time you're done, it's fun to play a card that gives you 12, 15 points. Some of these cards can score a lot of points if you play them at the right time, but you have to set yourself up for that. And then sometimes you're looking for a card that lets you play specific color pieces on the board. It's simple and easy. It's a game I can teach to pretty much anybody. It is currently my gateway game of 2018. It's a game I'm going to play. It's one of my most played games in 2018. It's a game that next week we're going to Dice Tower Con, and I expect to see this being one of the most played games there. This game is fantastic. Azul has been breaking all sorts of records just by how popular, how simple, and fun it is. This is easily a worthy successor. I personally like it better, although not everyone's going to feel the same way. And I really think you should check it out. Reef, amazing. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent.